Welcome to Top Tier Wrestling, your ultimate destination for all things AEW and WWE. Whether you're a hardcore wrestling fanatic or just a casual viewer, we've got you covered with the latest news, in-depth show reviews, and our unfiltered opinions on everything happening in the world of professional wrestling. Join us as we dive into the high-octane action, dramatic storylines, and backstage buzz of AEW and WWE. Get ready to step into the ring with us and stay on top of the wrestling world. This is Top Tier Wrestling. Welcome, everyone, to the Top Tier Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, the aerial assassin, Will Josh Spray, with my co-host, Timeless Donnie Storm. And today we're going to be discussing the October 2nd episode of AEW Dynamite, their 5th anniversary. Let's go. All right, so starting out this episode, we open up with a cold promo of the Moxley crew with menacing music and pretty much just a pan around and a little bit at the beginning of Claudio Castagnoli and the Bastard Pack and Marina Shafir.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of that, you have Jon Moxley start discussing how they have plans for Wheeler Yuta, along with Castagnoli and Pac making mention of it. Castagnoli specifically talking about how I'm the same guy I always was, and Pac discussing how he needs to make a decision. And it was a weird bit in the promo between those two because it seemed like they were trying to encourage Wheeler Yuta to come to terms with the fact that he's not really any different. Whereas Jon Moxley's approach was either join us and be with us or we'll consider you against us. So his was a little more hostile of a take.
Yeah.
And then he went on to sort of promise, Jon Moxley did, to take out Bryan Danielson and send him home to his family. And that war and casualties are promised.
Mic drop.
Indeed. It was a solid promo, and I'll speak more about it because obviously Moxley and his crew are going to come up again later in the episode. But I'm really getting sort of a vibe off of Moxley and his crew that really is a lot like Thanos. Like, he's aware of what needs to be done, and he's the only one who's willing to do it.
Yeah.
But then moving on from that, we also heard that apparently Taz had been attacked and is out tonight, with Nigel McGuinness taking his place, and something about his knee being really kind of hurt. Now, I believe that this is a work scenario, not a shoot scenario. So anybody who's listening, I don't think we need to be legitimately concerned about Taz. And I think as that continues to play out, we'll find out that somebody has attacked Taz, probably most likely in an effort to get at Hook.
Yeah.
But we will see. Time will tell.
Yeah, and we'll explain why we think that, because there's something that comes up later. And we'll talk about it when it gets there.
Yep. But moving on from that and some brief introductions from the announce team, we are immediately given one of the bigger matches that was announced on Dynamite, like right out the gate. We open with Ricochet versus the aerial assassin, Will Ospreay. And I am absolutely here for this match. This, I'm fairly certain, is going to be like match of the night or one of easily.
Now, right before this match starts, like they cut to the back where Kyle Fletcher is back there, with Ospreay, and it looks like he's like, just hyping him up, giving him some, like you got this type talk. And then Don Callis comes up with oh my god.
Konosuke Takeshita.
Thank you. It was in my head and I was like, no, that's not right. Don't say the wrong name. Yeah. So he comes up and Takeshi's just mean mugging Osprey like he does.
Like he has been doing for a while.
Yeah. And Don Callis comes up to address Will Ospreay. Apparently, they need to talk about the match that they had, that Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher had the other night. Because apparently phones don't exist in this universe, and other days of the week don't exist. So like life and time paused until
This show.
this show, and then Don Callis was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I was in storage until now. I got to go take my thumb body over and ask Will Ospreay about this match." So yeah, and Will Ospreay's like, "I don't have time right now. I've got to get in the ring." And and so Don Callis, "Oh yeah, bro, I gotta go, bro." Or I guess it's more like, "I gotta go, bro." So then. So then Don Callis is like, oh, okay, thumb, 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 thumb. Which in thumb language.
It's like he's here with us in the podcast. That was frightening.
Isn't it? But for those who don't speak thumb, I had to learn it. It that means, oh, well, we'll talk later. You go, good luck. You go out there and you do what you got to do. Wink, wink, point, point, finger guns. And the whole time, Takesha's still mean mugging.
Totally mean mugging.
Yeah,
and
okay, I
and
said it.
Callis is all like a couple of times he's like, well, we got to go. We're getting on a plane. We got to leave. We're not going to be in the arena anymore. We got to go. We're so not going to be here.
Wink, wink. All right. So he leaves, a wink, and the match starts. And boy, oh boy, what we were expecting is exactly what we got. We were waiting. I was so hyped for this match. And Ricochet looked better than I had even anticipated. I thought he was going to be amazing. He was that, and then some. Like I was an understatement. What I was talking about, I was on some dumb shit. What I really meant was, I hope Ricochet gives us what he gave us, which was just freaking ridiculous.
And here at the beginning of the description of this match, I would like to say, like, we've seen Ricochet in a few AEW matches thus far, but this, I feel, was us the first time really getting to see Ricochet with the reins off, like doing things and expressing himself in the ring in ways that, unfortunately, he just was not able to or given the opportunity to in the WWE.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, they looked, for those who would think Ospreay would outshine Ricochet or vice versa, no. They were so evenly matched, or they looked so evenly matched in this particular bout, that I could see. I mean, I was thinking while watching this, how the hell is this gonna end? Who's gonna win this? I mean, like, they just kept going. They just kept going. That, like, if you thought the exchange between Will Ospreay and Pac was amazing, and it was, this will blow your mind. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah. And I mean, it was amazing, and they even pointed out, and then you, I think, also pointed out that Ospreay was much thicker now. Like, when the first time, or the first matches they've had back in the day, they were much skinnier, these two.
Oh yeah. Going back and taking a quick peek at some of that, because they were posting up some of the old match footage on X. You take a look at it, and Will Ospreay is about as big and kind of a lanky kid as, say, like Nick Wayne. And you compare that to now, where he's significantly more sizable. And even Ricochet, not quite as noticeably so comparatively, but Ricochet is also carrying some more mass and is more chiseled than back in the day.
Yeah. And I said that to say that, like, even though there's more muscle mass on these men, that only helps them. I think. I mean, they were all over the place, and
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know who. Uh, I don't. I don't know who would have won this match if if Don Callis had actually stayed or left, like
Yep,
like he
yep.
said
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
going to. I
yeah. We're giving
honestly
it
don't
away a bit.
know. Well, I mean, they already know. Oh, come on, we already said wink, wink, right?
Yeah,
Like they know that this is gonna be screwed with because Don Callis. That's why, and Takeshita is just angry. I don't know about what, I don't know. Uh, but I mean, God, I'm trying to think. There was so much. Even the opening
yeah,
when they were checking each other out, or filling each other out. The bout that usually happens in the beginning,
yeah. The
where
chain wrestling and the wrist
yeah,
locks and all that. Yeah.
and the backflips and all that, the double pose. Even from the beginning, you knew
Oh,
that
the
this was going to
double
be.
pose.
Yeah, you knew that this
Can
was going to be a sensational match. Yes.
Can I just say, you talked recently about how Will Ospreay is one of the wrestlers that gives you that "I'm a little kid again" feeling.
Yeah.
Watching him and Ricochet, the way they were maneuvering in that ring, and the way that their outfits pop. I mean, Ricochet has long carried himself like hitting the superhero pose, right? So
Yeah.
he and Osprey are both like action figures, with Osprey also being somewhere between a superhero or an assassin from Assassin's Creed, which I think is more specifically where he's coming from. And so if I had my kids there, this is the match where they get to see two real life action figures go at it in the ring,
Yeah.
and that the stereo backflips into the double hero pose landing, and then
Hmm.
sort of a stare down coming out of it was everything. Like that's almost a synopsis of what you can expect this match is going to be, and it was worth all of it. Like it was everything that you're talking about, how it makes you feel like a kid again. That's
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to interject there.
Now, the match went on for a bit, and I mean, honestly, there was move after move. Uh, Hurricane Rana was Osprey's best friend. Um, every freaking flip move was Osprey's best friend.
Yeah.
Are there any particular like moves that you remember
Well,
or think
the
about that you thought really looked good? I mean, they all looked good, right? But you got any favorites, any
Oh,
highlights?
there's certainly some high spots, but it is difficult to pick out because this was like a
Mm-hmm.
long string of nothing but high spots. Although the counter wrestling between Ricochet and Osprey was phenomenal. Like I watched
Mm-hmm.
them counter out of moves in ways that I've never seen things countered out of before. But there certainly was this massive spot. Um, One that comes to mind immediately where Will Osprey jumped up onto the barricade outside of the ring,
Mm-hmm.
but he had to catch his balance, and in that moment of hesitation, Ricochet like ran up the wall and jumped high enough to Hurricane Rana Osprey from standing position off of the barricade straight onto the floor. And I was like, oh my God, Osprey is dead now. I mean, he wasn't, but it sure looked like it ought to be.
Yeah.
And then there was another move. I think it was this brutal Os cutter that was done on the apron that just looked like, well, that's it for Ricochet. He had a
Yep.
promising, AEW career in the works, but here it is. It's over. So it was insanity. These two men are just crazy. I saw another big high spot, and this is kind of what I meant when I was saying, we've seen some stuff out of Ricochet that we weren't able to see in the WWE. Most specifically was when Osprey attempted the hidden blade, and Ricochet countered into a backslide bomb. Which, for those not aware, like if you're familiar with a backslide pin, where they sort of hook the arms of their opponent and then sort of kneel down, and that forces their opponent kind of to their shoulders to the mat, the backslide bomb version of that is where they prejudicially flip their opponent over straight onto their head and neck, like without the intent to necessarily make that the pin, but just to splatter their opponent. And he
Yeah.
went immediately from that to picking up Osprey and hitting like a 180-degree spinning sit out pile driver. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, clearly Ricochet knows a lot of moves that he just wasn't allowed to do because, as we
Yeah.
all know, WWE kind of has a ban on pile drivers with very rare exceptions. Although they have been loosening the reins on things like the Poison Rana, which, I mean, I know it's not a pile driver, but it is a direct onto the top of your head kind of a sell.
Yeah.
And the Canadian Destroyer. Those two have started to make a comeback in the WWE, and I'm curious to see if when they go to Netflix, how much more that window can open. I know a lot of people are like, are they going to be able to say naughty words? I'm less
I
concerned
I
about
don't
that
care.
than
Yeah.
if they can do more moves that were previously banned in order to
Yeah.
compete with what AEW is doing over here on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
That's just
Yeah.
going to be good for all of us if we get to see more of that kind of in-ring action.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
moving
Um.
on from that, yes, this match had like just tons of high spots. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
There was one part. There was one point after that. Uh, I think there was a Ricochet went for a shooting star press. And then Osprey countered. I think. Hold on, with the poison Rana. Yes. And then Ricochet hit a poison Rana on him.
Oh yeah, the
But
traded
then,
Poison Ranas was sick. Yeah,
but then
yeah.
Osprey hit him with the hidden blade. I mean, and so they're both out. Like.
Yeah, yeah. The that was amazing. By the way, it was like what was it? A poison rana into like I think it was a poison rana counter, and then it was another poison rana, and then immediately upon landing that, it was the hidden blade, and then Osprey sort of falls down on top of Ricochet because both men at this point are demolished,
Yeah.
and it ends up being a situation where both men's shoulders are down because Osprey fell so far over Ricochet that his shoulders were on the mat. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that one because it was clearly the offensive move of Osprey, and he was on top in the pin. But they
Yeah.
decided the referee, I guess, determined that that's a double pin, and so
Yeah.
initially that results in a basically a draw, and everybody's like, and Osprey and Ricochet are like, bullshit, run it back, and so we get an intervention from Tony Khan, who approves resuming the match, and everybody was like, yay, because that was such an unsatisfying way to end, this epic battle that's going on between these two super evenly matched guys.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, just when everybody was happy, joy was taken away from us, and Takeshita, who I
Yeah,
can't decided that he didn't want to see any more of this bullshit.
nope.
And
And it was just after Osprey had hit another hidden blade.
yeah. And yeah, so that was like cool story. Takeshi came in and beat the stuffing out of Osprey. And of course that means the match was DQ. Um, and I think I think he attacked Ricochet after that. Um,
Yeah, Takeshita had everybody. His hands were rated E for everybody. He went after both
yes,
men and just demolished both of them. But I mean,
yeah,
again, these are two men that had been going on for a while in a really just nothing but high spot match. So
mhm,
of course Takeshita is not going to get too much resistance beating the crap out of both of them at that point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, even with that ending, which some people feel was a little, wah, wah, you don't. I think they're building some heat. They didn't want either one of these guys to be like to lose the match just yet. Um, and I see that Will Ospreay has a Takeshita problem. Um, that he's gonna have to deal with. So I'm okay. I'm okay. I feel like this match was not only good, but it was also used to create or to build more story, to add more to the story. and to basically say, you're gonna see Ricochet and Osprey again, and I'm here for it. So I don't know. I don't think it fell flat. I think it was. I mean, of course, I would like to see an ending to it. But if you're gonna tell me that there's another match coming, if you're telling me that it's gonna happen again, and maybe even see a
Hmm.
match with Takeshita and Osprey, and maybe even Takeshita and Ricochet, let's go. I'll even take a 3-man on that. I mean, let's go. So I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And plus, we
I
also have to remember that what is it, Wrestle Dreams coming up? Maybe they're setting something up for that. Like, so I don't know. I don't think it was. I don't think it fell flat. What do you think?
I completely agree with you. I would say that this match was top tier, and anybody who feels like the ending was flat, I think that's being a little myopic here because you have two talents with such a storied rivalry that the way I took it was that, oh, we're definitely seeing Ricochet and Osprey in AEW round two now, and I'm here
Yeah.
for it. If
Yep.
if
Yep.
this is a sample of what the next one could be like, then oh my god, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I guess I could see where you're coming from. I guess you wanted it to be decided one way or the other, but I'm okay with it being teased a bit. Like
Yeah.
we just got done watching over in WWE the amazing series that was put on by Braun Strowman and Big Bronson Reed. And at no point was I like, well, I guess that's still up in the air. What a flat ending. No, I was like, oh my God, these two are incredible against one another. I am here for every second of whatever is about to happen next. That's how I took it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they would be setting up a three-way as has been suggested between Osprey and Ricochet and Takeshita. I think they would want to have Ricochet and Osprey settle their score one-on-one once and for all with the way this match went. But
Oh
I
yeah, for
do
sure.
agree with you wholeheartedly that Osprey clearly has a Takeshita and a Don Callis family problem, and
Hmm.
I'm here for wherever that's going because
I'm also curious if his friend has anything to do with it too, or if
well,
he's just
yeah,
he has no
yep.
idea. He might have been on
I
the outside looking in.
I'm curious to find that out too because as we saw on the previous show, Fletcher wasn't exactly above being willing to use the screwdriver Don Callis gave him to get the
Yeah.
job done, and so there's clearly not alignment there. And I could very easily see it being going either way, right? Like
Yeah.
either they
Yeah.
peel Fletcher out of the Don Callis family because he's not gonna stand by and watch his best bud that he super loves like being dealt with by Don Callis this way, or I could see Fletcher coming back and saying, "Look, I'm tired of taking a beating and taking the L because you're not willing to do what needs to be done. I got my ass completely whipped by MJF because you wouldn't pull the trigger on the Tiger Driver, and
Yeah.
we lost our opportunity to become tag team champions against one of the best tag teams in the world because you couldn't handle doing what needed to be done, and I'm sick of it."
Yeah.
I could see
Yep.
it going that route too. So we
Yeah.
have some options here that create a lot of interest, at least, I think so. And so I'm real curious to see where that goes. But I
Yeah.
absolutely could see an Osprey Takeshita at Wrestle Dream.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm here for it. Let's go.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think that particular segment ended with Takeshita uh posing with the title, and
Hmm.
that's it. And let me tell you something. My man deserves a belt, so I get it. He deserves a belt. It's belt time for him. I don't know if it's gonna be Will's, but he deserves a belt.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you were say something?
I was just fully agreeing. Like
Ah,
I really would like to see them do something with Takeshita because we're getting to a point where we constantly hear about how an amazing talent he is and how he beat Kenny Omega twice in the same week and this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, so why isn't he just dripping gold? Where if he's all
you
that. And
know,
I'm not saying I don't think he is all that. I'm saying if that's the case, this dude needs some gold. So I'm fully agreeing with you.
yeah. Interestingly enough, I really am I don't know why there's no gold on him, because we're talking about AEW. Excuse me. We're talking about AEW. They got belts. for everything. Their belt has a belt. Why is there no belt on him?
I think they're maybe waiting for the right one because they're billing Takeshita to be like a top card guy. So I don't think they just want him to go pick up the Ring of Honor championship. No offense to the Ring of Honor championship, but I do think that at minimum they want Takeshita going for things like this belt, the international belt, and
Yeah,
all of that stuff. And then from there up, right, like to the AEW Men's World Championship belt. I believe that is the type of star they want to prime Takeshita to be.
yeah,
And so, if this is a direction they want to go with it, I'm here for it because I definitely think Takeshita is that good. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and I mean,
absolutely.
he obliterated Ricochet and Osprey like so much. I
Yeah,
like I can't remember what they call it, but the like ginormous like from a vertical suplex position into what looks like a Michinoku driver move that he does is nasty looking and I'm here for it.
mm, yeah, yeah. He's probably. I hate to say it this way, but I think him and Okada are two of my favorite Japanese wrestlers. I hate to break it up or define it by race, but you know what I mean when I say that. Um,
Well, I think it's fair because a lot of these guys, although Takeshita I think was AEW even before the Forbidden Door was open, but I could be mistaken
yeah,
on that. But with the opening of the Forbidden Door, you definitely have like I don't think it's inappropriate to designate the CMLL talent that has come in through the Forbidden Door, and I don't think it's inappropriate to cite the New Japan talent that has come through the Forbidden Door.
yeah,
And so, to that degree, I agree with you. I think we've gotten some amazing international talents, and I think that's one of the real strengths of AEW is that
yeah,
these guys come over and instead of just looking like Jobber McJobberhead or being billed into the mid or bottom of the card, they actually have the opportunity to really rise to the top.
yeah,
And I think that's fantastic.
yeah. Here for it. Um, but after that amazing match, we had some downtime. Mercedes Monet with Camille uh is in the back, and she is celebrating the 5th anniversary of Dynamite. So we get a package of her time on Dynamite, which I think is just her coming out
Yeah.
and doing her dance. I mean, maybe it was in slow motion, slow motion.
Exclamation.
Maybe it was in slow motion. I don't know. Um, but yeah. So then that happened,
Yeah.
and she bragged about her success and blah 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 blah. I'm not gonna talk about her. I will say that MVP came out and offered his business card to her, and she seemed interested. So
Yeah, she
uh
didn't immediately yeet it off of, out of the frame. But I
yeah,
will
and
say that,
if MVP, if you're a wrestler, okay, I'm sorry, I just have to say, if you're MVP, I'm sorry, if you're a wrestler, especially one of color, uh, in the back or out, whatever, and an MVP comes up and hands you his business card, who's gonna throw that away? Nope. I'd be like, thank you, sir. I'd take that, pocket that, and perhaps call him. Now,
mm,
if I were Swerve, I think I'd say with Prince not well. You know what? We'll see. We'll see. Cause Prince, yeah, well, we'll see.
yeah, yeah. I will say of that particular segment, like all night long, they're giving little tiny video packages here and there of like the best of the history of the 5 years of Dynamite, right? And
Yeah.
so Mercedes comes out and she's like, she's excited over all of what's happened in the 5 years. And it's like, you mean in the 10 seconds you've been here?
Like, you just got here. Shut up.
And so of course her video package about what's best about Dynamite is all of like her stuff since she's been here. I mean that just
Yeah.
fits with the CEO's character. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm excited to see what MVP is bringing to this situation, and
Yeah.
this isn't the last time we see Mr. MVP tonight.
No. No. And we'll get to that when we get to it. after
Exactly.
that, after that, we're backstage still, and the guns are ready. You know, they're gearing up to go be out with Juice Robinson when he has his match with Hangman. But Hangman said no to that, and he did so with a chair.
He told them to
Uh,
sit down, and he even brought them a chair.
yeah, he told them to sit down and be humble. Um, and they both chose to lay down instead. But he did leave the chair for them just in case one of
Yeah, that
them
was very nice.
decided. Yeah,
Yeah,
come on.
long story short, Hangman comes in behind them while they're, I think, getting ready or as part of an interview segment, and he absolutely lays out both Austin and Colton, like in short order. Like, so the guns are completely out of the picture for this upcoming match between Juice and Hangman after this.
Chair abuse. Um, hey, that must have been one hell of a chair. Because I mean the match wasn't even right after that. Right after that we had Chris Jericho. Hi guys. And the Learning Tree and Big Bill and oh my God, the Bad Apple. Yeah, the Bad Apple.
Yep. And
Yeah, so I mean that was the next segment.
we open it up with Big Bill in the ring, telling us
Being amazing.
his giant redwood wisdom, um, and proceeds to hype up how much Jericho has taught him before introducing the learning tree.
Yeah.
And then the learning tree makes his way to the ring with the Bad Apple, and essentially, Jericho goes on to talk about how instrumental he has been to the existence of AEW and
True.
Dynamite, and also takes some credit for the newly negotiated TV deal, which is insane, by the way. If you haven't heard, they negotiated speculatively because nobody has an exact figure, but close sources are indicating that it's anywhere between 150 to 170 million a year for the next 3 years, with an optional fourth.
Hey, Tony Khan, you mogul.
I'm glad to hear it because I really do like what AEW is doing, and
Yeah.
I am glad that they're going to have the opportunity to grow.
All I'm
But
thinking is
but
more wrestling. I'm so hyped. I'm ready for this.
yeah,
Like I'm
but
success. Let's go.
yeah, but Jericho, as he is wont to do, uses the opportunity to sort of shoot at his critics, like while in character in a promo. And he says, "We sure made a lot of quote unquote experts look real stupid." And I was
Yeah.
like, "That's amazing. That's so amazing, Chris."
Yeah.
And nothing, here's the thing. I know he's the learning tree and he's a heel, but literally nothing he said about what he has done and how instrumental he's been in the fact that AEW is where it is inaccurate, like at all. And I think the audience like understands that, even though he's a heel character, because at one point the learning tree says that you should all thank me for, all that I've done here. And then you've got Brian Keith going, say thank you, Chris Jericho. And he goes, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. And he's like, say it with me. And the audience does. They like, I remember we were looking at it and we were like, are they saying thank you, Chris? Or are they saying something a lot less flattering? And it turns out they were legitimately thanking Chris, and I was so pleased that the audience is savvy enough to realize that Chris is spitting nothing but truth about what he's done for that company.
Yeah.
And they were like, "We'll give you your propers, even though you're the learning tree and you're Chris Jericho." And Chris Jericho then goes on to mention that in addition to the 5 years on Dynamite, it's his 34th year since his debut as a pro wrestler, and our jaws hit the floor. Like, I'm lucky to have lived 34 years, let alone to have anything close to a career that storied. Like,
Yeah.
Chris Jericho has probably been doing this longer than damn near anybody in the current era. It's insane to have a career that long, and that he's still where he is and doing it at the level he's doing it is phenomenal. And then from there, Chris then goes on to mention that last week he pinned the Ring of Honor World Champion Mark Briscoe, and so he thinks it's fair for him to challenge Briscoe for the belt, the Ring of Honor World title, at Wrestle
Mhm.
Dream. I believe he also said something along the lines of saying, "The Ocho is gone. Make way for the Nueve."
Yes.
And of course, when he says all this, as the rules of wrestling dictate, Briscoe's name was mentioned, so Briscoe's music cues up.
Well, he did request Briscoe. Like he wanted to know if
Hmm.
that worked for him, and so reach for the sky, boy, pops on. And
Yep.
Briscoe with the conglomeration comes out. He comes to the ring, and everybody stays on the floor because Briscoe said that it's like, easy boys, this is between me and Jericho, right? And so
Man, it's like Briscoe is here.
you
I'm
know,
waiting to hear somebody, like in the middle of the podcast, I'm waiting to hear, "Get the hell up out of here, Jack Perry."
yeah, that's never gonna die, man. Oh, that's the coolest thing Jack Perry has ever been a part of. As being
True
told to get
facts.
the hell up out of here, Jack Perry.
True
Um,
facts.
but then Briscoe comes out, and everybody gets on the apron. Everybody else, like so, it's just Jericho and Briscoe in the ring, and Briscoe pointed out that he wasn't gonna make any excuses, basically about losing the match. But he also pointed out that Big Bill helped Jericho uh, beat him, but he's not gonna make it like he's not gonna make excuses because it was a tornado tag team match.
Hmm.
But he also said that he'd love to
Which
face Jericho. Where
I loved. I loved that he went on this long tirade about the things he's not going to say, which allowed him to
yeah,
entirely say it. But then he's like, "But I ain't gonna say that." Oh, Briscoe, you treat.
yes. Um, but then Briscoe was cut off while he was talking about how he would love to face Jericho, and he was about to talk about the word of the day. Um, when Jericho cut him off, and basically said that he didn't think that Briscoe could beat him. And then
Yeah,
he says the thing. He says maybe your brother Jay could have. And
yeah,
I
and
was
the
like,
whole
ooh,
mood. Yeah, the whole
ooh.
mood was like, "Oh no, he didn't."
Yeah. I know. You know what? Maybe Briscoe is a really good actor, but I actually think that he was upset about that. Um, because
Could
I
be a little
mean,
bit of both.
yeah, because I mean, normally he gives us really great, um, really great high energy promos, but I mean, that took him, I mean, he was even stuttering through his reply. So I really think that he was
Briefly,
upset
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it sobered him up like quick. Like he's
yeah,
usually, I'm crazy, and here he was like
yeah,
he turned dark mode. It was a switch. Like it was
yeah.
palpable.
And that's because, and fucking Jericho he kept going. He said something like, "Everyone knows Mark will never be as good as Jay," uh, which got Jericho punched in the face by
Yeah,
Briscoe.
all like every ounce of redneck kung fu to the face.
Yeah, and then he told Jericho to keep his brother's name out of his mouth, and he accepted the challenge. Uh, but I mean, I don't know. I'm telling you, man, he did really good. Briscoe really sold
Yeah,
his part
he
in
sold
that
it. Briscoe
particular.
is
Yeah,
so
he's a
much better
national
than I think people
treasure.
realize. Yeah.
He is a
Yep.
national treasure. This man. Um, but I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So that was really turned out to be a really good and somewhat slightly emotional promo, or really,
Yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah. It,
And
it
it
went
built
from
some heat
zero
for a
to a
match.
hundred. Yes. Yep.
It built some heat for a match that I was kind of about. Um, Honestly, I love Jericho. I love Jericho. Okay, like Jericho, the dude. But sometimes Jericho's wrestling. Um, sometimes it leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think that him and Briscoe could give
We'll be
us.
able to put it. Yep.
Yeah, I think it will give us a good match. Briscoe is really good at matching the energy of his opponent, and so he does a great job of making them look good. and that I think is needed for uh for Jericho, because Jericho
Hmm.
sometimes, uh a lot of the time, often when he gets in the ring, he starts out high energy, but then he slows down in the middle. And he needs somebody that's going to keep pace with him to keep the middle segment of that match interesting or high octane, or else we'll just have a very slow, boring, I'm gonna slap your chest for 30 minutes match. Um, so I think Briscoe can deliver the kind of match and the style that Jericho's going to need to look good. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to some of this segment, Briscoe did tell us that the word of the day is consequentially,
Yes.
but he didn't get to really elaborate on that. But he did say, because he was giving Jericho his propers about his 34-year career, and that there's nobody that's bigger or more storied than Jericho, which is why consequentially it'll be a feather in his cap when he beats. And that's when Jericho cut him off to say, I don't think you can beat me. And not long after, Jericho mouthed off about Jay, they got him slapped. Briscoe said, again, consequentially, you were going to get the biggest dim boy's ass whooping at Wrestle Dream. And
Yeah.
that was gold. And I agree with you. Like, I don't know if Briscoe's just that good of an actor, or if it really did touch a nerve, or if he just managed to leverage both in such a great way.
Yeah.
But like, it was sobering to see how Briscoe switched from being kind of goofy and fun loving to I'm
Uh-huh.
about to kill this man.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, even I was like, well, that's not funny. Like I said, he
no,
immediately
but
felt bad.
but it was genius because one, it solidifies that even though the crowd 5 seconds before was saying thank you, Jericho, because they can appreciate that Jericho is right about all those things.
Yeah.
Jericho reasserts himself as the absolute heel going into this match, and by taking such a low road that most people would be like, dude, no. Um, he immediately escalated a match that just got born, right? Like out of
Yeah.
nowhere for Wrestle Dream, and he put it into like high intensity grudge match category just with that
Yeah.
one line.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so if there's any doubt that Chris is the best in the world or one of, um I think he can show you at a moment's notice that he's very, very good at what he does, and there's a reason he's been doing so well for 34 years.
I
Because that
agree.
was brilliant. Like, it was a match that just got born, and they managed to give it more heat than like, as a contrasting example, them trying to build heat between Sami Zayn and Gunter that just wasn't there until it kind of was. You
Yeah.
know, um, he did all of that in like 1 minute versus like 3 or 4 segments across several weeks.
Yep.
And so that was brilliant. Now I think me and you and anybody who's at all a fan of Mark Briscoe really wants to see him deliver that dim boy's ass whooping to Chris Jericho at Wrestle
Yep.
Dream.
Yeah. And it will be earned. That's what I'm trying to say. Words are difficult. Yeah, but he'll earn that.
Indeed. So moving on from
He would
that,
have earned it. That's what I'm trying to say.
he
Woo.
would have
Phew.
earned it. It would have been consequentially the result of his own actions, as Briscoe told us all in
Yeah.
his word for the day. Moving on from that, we are taken to Darby Allen, who appears to be sitting in a parking lot, and he's going on about riding a bus in Washington and how one day 3 guys were taking
Gross.
turns sort of spitting at the back of his head, and
Hate
I'm
it.
like, where does this happen? I've spent years of my life, and stuff like that just doesn't happen outside of high school, or at least it hasn't to me.
Yeah,
But
never.
he talks about how he tried to keep calm and ignore it and let it go, but eventually he got into their faces, and
Like, how do
the
you keep
guy
calm with
said,
that?
what are you going to do about it? And he had a knife, and Darby says, well, I guess today I'm getting stabbed. and and
So
while
Darby
ultimately that
response.
The point of that being is that win or lose, he felt so good and vindicated to stand up for himself.
Yeah.
And he goes on to relate that to, standing up for himself against John Moxley, not being bullied by him.
Yeah, because that's what he was thinking about when John Moxley told him that he wasn't ready to be the champ.
Or the face of AEW. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now he needs to fight back. So at Wrestle Dream, he's issuing an open challenge to anybody who would like to make their name off of Darby Allin.
Yeah, anybody can get it.
So depending on what they do with it, like sometimes the open challenge can be a really cool surprise, and other times it can be kind of lame, like it was
Yeah.
with Jack Perry and
I knew it. That's
what was it,
exactly what I was about to say.
Suzuki?
Yeah.
And no offense, I'm sure Minoru Suzuki has like this fantastic history, but here of late, like the past couple of matches that I've seen him in, he doesn't look like he can do much more than just deliver like and no sell strikes. Like the match that he had with Jericho, and this relates to what you were saying before about, Jericho kind of rises or falls depending on who his opponent is. Um, in that match, Jericho could not elevate Minoru Suzuki with by descending into it just being nothing but back chops the entire freaking match. That was painful to watch. Like I don't care how painful it might have been for either one of them in their chests. It was painful to watch
Yeah.
because it was just so repetitive and boring. And it really starts to make me wonder, like, is Minoru Suzuki like physically incapable of doing much more than that? Because that seems to be what his entire match stick is just we're going to get into strike contests where Suzuki's not going to sell anything, and it maybe once or twice in the match would get the point across, but they always play it, like with him specifically, they play it out way too long. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's also too many Japanese wrestlers who all adopt the, part of the shtick where all they do is just no sell strikes. I've seen that out of Katsuyori Shibata. I've seen that out of Suzuki. I've seen that out of the Stone Pitbull, whose name is escaping me right now. And I think I've even seen that much to a much lesser extent, but a little bit from Okada. And it's like, you know, it's not as cool as you think it is, and it's even less cool when like all of you do it. Like it becomes a defining characteristic of the Japanese wrestlers that are at least in AEW, and it makes me wonder if like in New Japan is that like all they ever do is no sell each other strikes.
Yeah.
So it can be really good, the open challenge, but we have seen recently with Jack Perry versus Suzuki that it can also be really, really lame. So it's gonna depend a lot on who decides to answer that challenge.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, we are brought to what is probably the second best match of the night, and that
Yeah.
is Hangman Adam Page versus Juice Robinson. And believe you me, like I just said, this could potentially be the second best match of the night when the first best match of the night is Osprey and Ricochet. And I would have never believed that to be possible with a matchup like Hangman Page and Juice Robinson. Like, no
I honestly
offense
thought it
to
was gonna be a
Juice,
squash. Yeah.
no offense to Juice, and he and the Guns have been looking a lot better. I agree with you. On its face, I thought this is just going to be Hangman demolishing Juice, especially since he's already taken out the Guns.
Yeah.
But man, if Juice Robinson didn't look out freaking standing in this match, but his stock, to me personally, as someone watching him and assessing him as a star and someone I'd be a fan or not of, and just in general in AEW, this shot Juice Robinson's stock way to the roof.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
spoiler, him and Hangman put on a freaking banger.
Yeah.
Um,
Now I have seen and this I'm not really sure I get it. Now I'm not getting too far ahead when I say who won, right? Is
well,
that fine?
yeah. I mean, we are skipping to the end, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. If you want to talk more about the match, then I'll wait to to say what I'm about to say. Or what I
Okay,
was
yeah.
about to say.
Put just a brief pin in it. So
Absolutely.
the match starts out being kind of a brawl. Like it takes a while for the match to actually begin because
Mhm.
both men start beating the crap out of each other before they actually get into the ring. So we end up with the referee gal. Oh, why am I blanking on her name? But the ref is just running around outside trying to get them to please get in the ring, and
Yeah.
we get some spots where they're hitting each other with like everything shy of a kitchen sink. And at one point, Juice nails Hangman Page with like a full sized, I guess, a large beer, and then he hits him with a bucket of popcorn. And I'm sitting there thinking, with stadium prices, like that's like $50 worth of food that you just smashed into Hangman Page.
Yeah.
Um, then they finally actually get the fight into the ring. Um, and Juice Robinson, I think, is able to produce a belt. He had two different belts that night. He ended up having one that was like from the strap match that Hangman and Jeff Jarrett had. But
Yeah.
he also, once they were back in the ring, he actually pulls off his own belt and then proceeds to start choking Page with it, like out the gate, and it gets the 4 count, and then that belt gets thrown out. And
Yeah.
I think at that point they ended up kind of cutting to a commercial break where when we come back, Page has taken over the match.
Yeah. Well,
And
I thought him taking off his belt was at the end of the match. Like that was after, right? That was after the match was done.
you're talking about when Hangman did that to Juice. I'm talking about when Juice did it to Hangman.
Oh, I see. I
hmm
see.
But as the match progresses, we end up with this like huge, like just massive superplex that Juice Robinson hits Hangman with, and it was beautiful. Not from the middle rope, like both men all the way at the top, and it was just a gargantuan superplex.
Yeah.
And then for a good portion of the rest of this match, like Robinson is just nailing Page with everything. Like,
Yeah.
his punch series. He almost hits his finisher, but I believe Page countered out of that into the Deadeye. But I think Juice then countered out of the Deadeye again. And it's just kind of going back and forth, but Juice is holding his own and then some.
Yeah.
And I think there's a point where Juice Robinson attempts to hit his finisher. The Juice is loose, and as Hangman sort of gets out of that, he ends up kind of in a collar and elbow tie up with Juice and starts pushing towards the corner, and that almost backs Juice into the referee. And then when they're sort of dealing with that, no, let's see, am I seeing that right? Well, at one point they end up moving towards the corner, and the referee is distracted, and that results in Page kicking Juice with a low blow, and then
Yeah.
he jumps out of the ring real quick and hits a buckshot lariat for the finish. But man, if this was not a heck of a match between Juice Robinson and Hangman Page.
It was.
And
It
now
was
that we're at the
real
end,
good.
what you wanted to say?
Um, I don't know why I'm having a coughing attack, but I have water. I don't know what it is. But what I was gonna say is there are some complaints, and this isn't the first time that I've seen this. Even in some of the stuff that I was reading about the match, or like listening to other people talking about the match, or the AEW in general. Um, for some people, this match looked bad because it took Hangman too long to beat Juice. Like they feel like Like he should have just gone in, and Juice could give a good offense, but not as long, and then Hangman could demolish him, and then we move on. Like apparently this match was too long, and it looks bad. It looks bad if like somebody like Hangman
Mm.
can't beat Juice
I disagree.
quicker.
I can't do anything but disagree, and I think it's because people some of these people must just be used to the WWE making people like squash other people on a regular.
Yeah,
If you aren't aware that this was clearly an opportunity to put over Juice, then you've missed the point.
yeah,
They were clearly using this as an opportunity for you to see that Juice can go. That was the point. And even though he didn't beat someone like Hangman Page, he absolutely went and took Page to the distance, so much so that Page had to resort to, as heel Hangman would, kicking him with a low blow to get this win. And if you don't realize that that's AEW booking deciding that they want Juice Robinson to look like a stronger competitor, and that was the point of this match, then your opinion really doesn't make much sense to me, and I don't value it because
and that's
you don't see
usually
what's being done here.
yeah, and that's
And
usually when they do something like that in AEW. They're trying to show you. They're trying to have a competitor stand out. If any other time, Juice Robinson would just fall into the background with the group that he's in.
hmm
Um, so come on, I thought that
yeah,
was a great
and
decision. He
so
looked good.
so that opinion fails to realize that AEW is both a little more nuanced in not having it just be like five guys at the top and everybody else is a jobber. They
Yeah,
elevate their whole roster as best they can. And that is one of their strengths because if you go into a match and you automatically can be like, I just know that this is how this is going to go and
yeah,
let's get on with it, then,
yeah,
they're doing a terrible job then of making it compelling. Whereas if all of the roster is elevated and it could kind of go either way, then you maintain a feeling of tension and it's not a foregone conclusion, and this was not a foregone conclusion. In fact, we were pleasantly surprised that Juice forced Page to have to use a low blow to beat him. But that's not where the fun stopped either, because after this, and you brought this up before, Page gets the leather strap again and he pretty much yells that he's going to hang Juice, much the same
mhm,
way that he did at the Jeff Jarrett match, where he kind of flings him over the top rope and starts choking the life out of him. And when he starts to do this, we're like, well, I mean, I guess Juice is screwed because the guns are out of the picture. Who's going to come out? What, like Jay White? And sure enough, it was
yeah.
an opportunity for them to let you know that Jay White is back.
And
And
happy
he
I was.
happy indeed. He
I
hauls ass
am.
to the ring, and that forces Paige to let go of Juice. So Juice sort of falls down onto the ring side, and Jay White checks on Juice briefly before following Hangman back out into the crowd and proceeding to beat the tarnation out of Hangman Page.
He whooped his ass.
He whooped his ass.
His
And
ass.
they get back to a table that was set up earlier in this match when Juice and Hangman were fighting out in the audience, but it never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, they get back to a table that was sort of at a slanted incline, and Jay White starts hitting Hangman with like a really nasty series of very hard back chops, and then charges at him, picks him up, and runs him with a spear through this table, and pretty much lets Hangman know that Jay is coming for him. And then Jay goes back to the entrance ramp where Juice has sort of made, kind of crawled his way over to, and he helps Juice up, and the Bullet Club Gold is, they walk defiantly back up the ring, and it's fantastic. Like this match, for the content of the match itself, like I felt like Paige and Juice gave a great match, But then you also get the surprise of Jay White's return, and that's going to obviously lead into a feud between Jay White and Hangman Adam Page. Was all golden. Like, this match did so much. So I'm absolutely befuddled by anybody who would be of the opinion that they should have shortchanged this, because I felt like it was fantastic. And again, AEW is just altogether better at not letting their top guys be so much the top guys that everyone else on the roster is buried.
Yeah.
And I guess they're just not used to that, whoever was of that opinion.
Yeah,
But
lots of people. But I mean, that's an opinion that lots of people have, that they don't like about AEW. That a lot of their matches that should be a squash match goes on too long. And I'm thinking, I think honestly that you are thinking with WWE glasses, because that's just not how AEW does it. I think they try to make, like, you got a superstar, you got them for a freaking reason. They aren't there for you to squash. Like, they're one of your. Yeah, we got mid card this, and we got. I feel you. I hear you. I understand that. But just to squash somebody, come on. You pick the guy in training. You pick Joe Blow from the local uh wrestling promotion. Like, you don't freaking squash your superstars. So
I agree.
I like to see a bit longer. I want to be surprised. I look at somebody like I look at Juice, and Juice is an amazing character. I find him interesting. He's funny. He cracks us up, and he does give us good matches. Um, but when I heard this match, when I heard Hangman Adam Page versus Juice, I'm like, oh my god, okay, well, I guess this is gonna be the last will and testament of Juice before before. And that's not what I got. I got Juice saying, "Hell
Exactly.
no, I'm gonna give some stank," and he did, and it looked good. What's wrong with that?
Well,
That was made for a compelling match. 10 minutes. Listen,
mm-hmm.
it's too long. It was 2 minutes. Okay, but hear me out. The show is gonna be the length it's gonna be, regardless. Calm down. What the hell else are you gonna watch? That's what you're here for. You're here to watch wrestling. So watch it. Just watch the freaking match. If it's not boring, if it's good, uh, does it really matter that he's going against somebody that you feel should be squashed? Well, you should be surprised and impressed that he didn't.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the pattern AEW. I mean, they've always been a little bit good at that, but they've been really good at it lately. Look at how they turned us on our interest in Wheeler Yuta.
Yeah.
Like, in like 2 segments, suddenly we are interested in what's happening with Wheeler Yuta, whereas before that it was like, Wheeler who? And so why I also don't understand why you would think that they're setting up Juice to get squashed into oblivion when most of this year has been about establishing that the Bang Bang Gang are top guys.
Yeah. And don't you want
Why
all
would you
of them
do
to be
that?
top guys? Why do you want just like one or two? What are you even on right now?
And
I like the fact that we got a real good match where it looked competitive, because
yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
ultimately, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see some guy getting squashed for no. Like, listen, that gets boring real quick. Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that it didn't have its place. It does. When Braun Breaker got into the ring with Joe Blow, we knew this guy's gonna get obliterated in about 2 minutes, right? But that's Joe Blow. I don't want
Yeah.
Juice Robinson to be treated as Joe Blow. He didn't get Joe Blow's
Yeah.
check.
And AEW is pretty good about that. Like, they'll either take developmental talent and put them in a legitimate match, like when they put like Queen Amanada in there with like Robin Renegade. It
Yeah,
isn't a 100% pure squash. There's a point where Robin gets to show her stuff. So you've
yeah,
got that, like, this is one of our up and comers against one of our, a little bit more established wrestlers. And then there's storyline squashes like Brody King versus Action Andretti, but that's to fuel a storyline about how Action Andretti and Top Flight are getting very frustrated with their place in the universe. So it adds to that. There's a purpose to it. And you mentioned something about Juice Robinson's character, right? Like, this dude looks like Animal from the Muppets. and he kind of behaves that way too, and he's got a high-pitched voice and he yells all the time, so he would be nearly impossible to take seriously except for the fact that you have to, because he will kick the crap out of you in the ring if you
Yeah.
take him lightly. So this is
Looking at you,
fantastic.
Bloodline.
And it's like, is this legitimately too nuanced of character development and story arcing for the typical wrestling fan? I mean,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Come on. Well, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes there are complaints levied against AEW because it's AEW. Just because of that, and I'm just not here for
That's
that.
true.
I mean, and maybe you don't like the way certain things are done at a promotion. There are certain things that I don't like about things that happen at AEW or WWE, like but
Funny
ultimately,
you should say that.
but I'm not here to bitch about that. Like, I'm here because I love. I know I say it almost every podcast, but I love wrestling. So does Josh. That's why we're doing this. Like this,
Yep.
this is something
Yeah,
that we love to do. Like if
and
we
our
weren't
praise
sitting
and our
here at this
criticism.
podcast right now, we would
Hmm.
be sitting around talking about this anyway.
For
Like
our yeah.
that's how much we love this for hours. We have to cut it short here, guys. So I'm not here to
Yep.
squash any promotion. If it's a good promotion, if it's getting some attention, if wrestlers that we haven't seen are they're getting a moment to shine, I am here for that. I'm here for it. So let's go. You know.
Yeah.
But
And
speaking of good,
I would much prefer a rising tide floats all boats approach that uplifts like a majority of the roster than
yeah,
a here's a couple handful of top people and everybody else eats shit.
yeah,
And that would be what someone hoping for just a squash of Juice Robinson in this match is basically asking for. Like you want the Bang Bang Gang and all of them that have been given a lot of time to try and really shine and have done so to basically get buried unceremoniously. And I
yeah,
just don't, I'm not here for that. I can't agree with that. And I think you're dumb and you should feel bad if you believe that. Um, but
yeah.
you mentioned that there are some things in AEW that you don't like. Um,
I did.
and
Example: Jack Perry arrives.
yep, you get it.
He arrived, and Shibata Bread popped in to say that he wants to challenge him for the TNT title at
Yep. And
Wrestle Dream.
this is all
Yeah,
taking place out in the parking lot, by the way. So it's like
yeah,
literally Jack Perry arriving in the scapegoat mobile, and
yeah.
that's when he's approached by Katsuyori, and I think Rennie Packets is out there. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
she
she
is.
was
Yeah.
out there too. Yep. And so Jack Perry jumps out, and Rennie Packets is trying to get a word with him, and that's when Katsuyori Shibata pops in and uses Siri on his phone to basically say, you, me, and the TNT title at Wrestle Dream. And Perry says, "Well, I'll think about it," and then walks out of frame. And then Shibata turns around to say something to Renee with the phone, but before he can type it out, he is immediately accosted and drilled with the TNT title by Jack Perry, and then thrown into the front bumper of the scapegoat mobile. And he goes, "I thought about it. I accept." And that's we go kind of from there.
hmm And actually, I think after that, did we get a promo from Danielson?
We did. The next segment is a brief promo where Daniel. I'm sorry, I'm just never going to get this right because he was Daniel Bryan
Brian
in the WWE for so
Danielson.
long.
Just all you have to do
Brian
is
Danielson.
think about Nigel McGuinness and how he says Brian.
Yeah, yeah. Um, one day, maybe I'll get it. Uh, but Brian Danielson goes on saying he can't get the
Danielson.
phrase "fuck John Moxley" out of his head because it's his AEW World Title, not Moxley's. But
No, he said this is the AEW World Title, not Moxley's.
oh right, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why he challenged Kazuchika Okada tonight, title for title, because they're 1-1 and they need to break the tie. This is for AEW.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because I think, and I don't know if this is the right spot to talk about it, but I think Moxley's whole take is that what he is doing is what's necessary for AEW and that it's not about him. But I think that comes up later, so we'll talk about it more then.
Yeah.
But continuing from the thematic of things that you don't like in
Oh
AEW, here's
God.
here's two things that I super hate in AEW, and it leads into our next match, which was the worst match of the night. Spoiler. Um,
I
it is Serena Deeb versus Britt Baker, and this is like AEW just begging me to just turn the show off or fast forward or go,
I
grab some food and do anything other than watch.
I don't know what to say. Um, maybe Brit's wrestling style just isn't for me. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not saying that it's sloppy. I'm just saying that it's not for me. It's a snooze fest for me. In my opinion, it's boring. And Serena Deep is an unfortunate situation because that's a wrestler that I used to like. And then she went away and she came back, and boy, her move set sucks. It sucks balls. So now
Um,
these
yeah.
are these are two wrestlers that I just can't get with, man. And if you really wanted to make Serena D more boring, more uninteresting, then you put her in the ring with Britt Baker and vice versa. And that's just my opinion. And I mean, of course she's gonna be there because she's a hometown girl. Um, Brit is, and God, I don't even know, man. I, at least they're evenly matched as far as size is concerned. And I'm trying to find something good because I just said who wants to bitch all day. I just, and I'll keep it short because I really don't want to spend 10, 15 minutes on this match like they spent in the match. Um, but it's not interesting. Nothing they do is interesting. I kind of feel like Britt made Serena uh kind of cut some of her moves out because there were a lot of moves that she didn't do that I'm actually thankful for. That little
Yeah.
tying somebody up, little Windsor knot
The Windsor
crap.
knot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm glad she didn't do that, and I could see why Britt Baker would not want to do that. I feel like Britt Baker comes in and has a list of demands about what she won't do and what she doesn't want her opponent to do in the ring. I honestly feel that. I can't confirm that. I haven't read anything. I haven't seen anything online, guys. But I get the vibe that she's that kind of person. Like I really think she's the Lady Gaga
Yeah.
of the wrestling community, which I'm not
Well,
gonna go
based
there.
on
But
based on some of the backstage stories, she sounds like she's a damn diva.
right.
But
So
I'll give my thoughts at the end because I have a lot to say here.
okay. Yeah, well, I'll leave that to you because I really don't want to. I really don't want to stay on this map. Like it was the lowest point, and there was so much other good things that happened that I don't even want to give them uh as much time as I'm giving them right to freak now. But long story short, man, it was boring, it was uninteresting, and I was not surprised when Britt Baker won. Um, I think the best part about it was what happens at the end. Um, and yeah, that's really all I like. It's always the women's matches, guys, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's the one. It's always the one that I harp on. But especially in AEW, man, they need some freaking help. And it's not like they don't have amazing female talent back there. It's not like they don't have it. They just give us the same six women for some. They treat. I did whatever. Disappointing. If I could, disappointing. If I could just edit that match out of this particular Dynamite, I would. And now you may have the floor.
Yep. Thank you. I agree with you. This was a tremendously boring match. There was one or two high spots, so I'll hit those first to get the like one maybe two things that I can say positive about this match. Um, Britt Baker actually drilled an air raid crash and super air raid crash into Deeb that was pretty good. Those were good. That said, it stands out because Britt doesn't do that often. And both of these women, Deeb and Britt, one, they have absolutely no musculature to them at all. It's like watching two skeletons fight. And I don't say that to body shame. I say that because it kind of might be the reason why they look so lackluster in the ring. Like they tend to go for a lot of low effort, not too difficult to pull off like safe bullshit moves. And I've spoken at length about how I feel about striking and submissions and how I'm much more here for the slams and the drops. And so this makes me think that if you really want to be a wrestler and wrestle, then you should be putting some lean muscle mass onto your frame. Um, I'm sure that'll be a contentious take, but it's my
No, I
take.
mean,
So
generally
eat
for
me.
your health. For your health, though, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but generally for your health, if you're gonna be doing something like that, muscle mass is your friend. Like that's
It is. It gives you more resiliency to the damage you will take, and it makes you more safely able to pull off more interesting visually moves in the ring. I mean, it just
yeah,
does.
yeah.
That said, neither of these two women have an overly compelling move set, which can be that's a big part of why I don't like it. There's also a lot of times that less so with Serena Deeb. I will say this: Deeb is pretty much smiling the entire time she's in the ring. She doesn't have that problem of like with Britt Baker and say like Sky Blue and some of the other women that look like they would rather be anywhere but here, like they are
I would
starfish
rather she be anywhere
wrestling match.
too. I'd rather she be anywhere
Yeah,
else too.
but the match just wasn't that interesting. I mean, it ran a little long here, and I'm not saying that because I can't deal with a long match, but because Deeb literally ran through her move set once and then did almost all of it like spot for spot again.
Yeah,
And Baker countered her at every instance because it's like that you're duplicating your move set, and so I get that might have been part of the storytelling, but it actually just made for a match where we saw the same shit twice a lot.
yeah.
And it wasn't until like near the end, again with the like air raid crash and whatnot into the lockjaw, that something had happened. Because
The air
Deeb
raid
was in
crash did
control of
look
the
good.
match.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
the air raid crash did look good. That's true.
Yeah. But otherwise Deeb had control of this match for most of it, and it was bad. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
I
to
don't
be
know any way to say
perfectly,
it. Like this would be a D or a D minus in my book. Like it's the
yeah.
total opposite of top shelf. It's well drinks is what this was.
Yeah, and
Um
if I had to pick somebody's move set that I wanted to see, like if I wanted to see somebody in control of the match, I would have rather had seen Baker's move set.
and
I
that's
would rather
saying
see
something.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather see her in control. I feel like I see Serena Deep all the time. Like every Wednesday, every Saturday, I'm seeing her, right? I don't see Britt Baker that much. So yeah, I would have loved to have seen her in more control of the match than Deep. I know
Yeah.
maybe that's
Yeah.
why her move set was somewhat altered. Um, because
But
jeez,
to continue,
oh,
sorry, just to continue my thoughts on this match.
please, I'm sorry.
I think too many wrestlers take for granted that they need to make sure that their move set is interesting, or we just have differing opinions about what is interesting. But part of, like, for example, The Undertaker being as amazing as he was is that, like, almost every move he did was devastating, and he had, like, five different, equally brutal, nasty finishes. Even Hell's Gate, again, I'm not a big fan of submission finishes. I really don't care for him, but Hell's Gate at least looked like it was trying to choke you out and it looked mean.
Yeah,
But he had the tombstone. He had, at one point, briefly, he was using a dragon, was it Dragon Sleeper, which is also one of the few like submission finishers that looks like, this guy might actually die. Um,
yeah,
he had the choke slam. He had old school. He had, you know what I mean? Like he made
yeah,
sure that it wasn't just his character, but the moves that he was doing in that ring were interesting. And Baker and D both just don't get that for the most part. I'm I really think a lot of the women suffer from trying to do the least because they don't have the physical strength to do the most. And,
Yeah.
then try to get stronger would be my thing instead of trying to make me, as a wrestling fan, want to see you throw one more stupid punch or kick finisher. Like how rife the entire industry is with shit striking finishers is mind blowing. Like, this isn't the UFC. We all have seen the UFC, we all have seen boxing. And, we're here watching wrestling because we like pile drivers and power bombs and suplexes and shit. Not watching people fake punch and fake submit them, their opponents out. To me, that just has like almost zero intrigue.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason I'm not such a huge fan of Bryan Danielson. Like, the whole world loves this guy, and I'm just like not here for it because his entire move set is running knees and kicks and fucking submissions. So he's like the world's most boring wrestler. He
You
is
want
made
to hear something?
interesting. He is made interesting to me almost exclusively by what his opponent brings to the match.
You want to hear something interesting?
What's that?
Uh, I don't know what had happened, but I am now a fan. I'm now a fan of
Well,
Brian.
you
I don't
say
know what
that,
had happened,
but everything I just said will come up again later, unfortunately.
and everything
Um,
I just said, yep, will come up. We'll talk about it. We'll get there. We're almost there. We're
yeah.
almost there.
But for me, Britt Baker, not a draw. Serena Deeb, not a draw. Like, just not interesting on any level.
No.
And same with Mercedes Monet. Like, if there were three women that I think AEW could do to trim off the roster, it would be those three because they're terrible. They really are, and Mercedes especially. But I don't want to derail into that. This is about Deeb and Baker, and
Mhm.
I know everything I just said about AEW trying to be the rising tide that floats all boats. I have no choice but to hope that that rising tide can lift Serena Deeb and Britt Baker, and I'll be the first one to eat my words if they suddenly have made a change where I'm like, now I'm fan. But
Yep.
we aren't there yet, and I haven't been there since I've seen any of these three women in AEW. So for now, these are the chicks that I would love to see trimmed out because there are better women on that roster that are more interesting and better wrestlers than these chicks.
One of them
And
even came out to help.
one of them did. Two of them were actually at ringside. The two much more interesting competitors were not involved in this match directly, but you had Mariah May watching this. And I mean, I guess if she needed something to do while she ate like a piece of popcorn, I guess this would be it. But it suggests that Mariah May is watching with interest of either of these two women, which just makes me sad because this will just bring Mariah May down to deal with either of these two.
Yeah.
Um, and then at the very end, after Baker gets the win, I believe Serena Deeb jumped her and started attacking her, which
Doing
ultimately
that
led to
stupid knee thing. I'm so
yeah, which
sorry.
ultimately led to Queen Aminata coming out to make the save on Dr. Britt Baker. And Queen Aminata, I'm super excited to see. Like, I think she is ultimately AEW Women's World Champion material. Um,
I hope, but
so Mariah May, more interesting than Serena Deeb or Britt Baker, and Queen Aminata, orders of magnitude more interesting than either of these two.
yeah.
And this is weird because Deeb has been doing this for 1,000 years, and Britt Baker will not but incessantly make sure you know that she's been with AEW from day one. Yet I feel like newcomers like Mariah May and Queen Aminata, the up and comers, the new people on the block, are being put in a position where they're having to put these sad wrestlers over. You may have been
Yeah.
doing it longer, but you don't do it better, and that's bad because it doesn't lead
Yeah.
me to believe that you ever will if you've been doing it terribly for this long.
Yeah.
So any affiliation with Mariah May and Aminata that isn't those two having a match with each other, but instead trying to do something with Deeb or Baker
Yeah.
is pulling them down, and they're
No.
only just recently established.
Yeah. But for some reason they couldn't even let Amanada win an opportunity for a title shot. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
the
know,
eliminator match between her and Mariah May, I was sad that she didn't get that win.
pshaw to that. Um But so yeah, she came out and she helped DMD, and then you know, carried her gently out of the ring. No, I'm just kidding. She helped out of the ring, and that was that. Um, After that, I think was it Renee Packett that was talking to Hook or trying
I
to
I think so. I think it was Renee. And yeah, she was attempting to talk to Hook, but Hook was
Big
pretty
Mad.
enraged. For Hook, actually. Hook is
Yeah.
so stoic that it's like, are you breathing, my dude?
No,
So
he was
yeah, he
not.
was super big mad.
He was big mad about whomever attacked Papa Taz. He was
Exactly.
not
And
feeling that.
the fact that Hook was big mad about it was excellent, right? One,
Yeah.
it's great, right?
Which
But
also
it's
let us
also
know that it was kind of a work. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, no, you just took the words right out of my mouth. The fact that
Twinsies.
Hook is responding to it in the show like this does make me think that this is not anything other than a work. Like this is in the
Yeah.
kayfabe that Taz is hurt. He isn't actually hurt, which is good to find out, right? Like,
Yeah, I think he needed an off day. He was still in tier one. I don't know. He was doing something
yeah,
else.
yeah, but he's otherwise fine. He's not actually hurt. And it leaves us wondering, well, since it is then a work, who did it? Who attacked Taz?
Dun dun.
So the mystery. But whenever we find out, man, Hook is going to tear him a new a hole, and I'm here for whenever that occurs.
Yeah.
And then
Uh.
moving on from
Yep.
there, we get Christian Cage of the Patriarchy coming out and basically just one more time, like one more match, one more promo, eh, Christian? That's a reference back to his last work in WWE where his whole shtick was one more match. Um, one more time, Christian Cage makes sure that we know that since he won the Casino Gauntlet opportunity, aka AEW's Money in the Bank for all intents and purposes, that he promises to be the next world champion.
Yeah.
The
Dinero
end.
en el banco.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Yep.
And he was done. Then Mariah May was backstage. I think again with Rennie Paquette. I don't know. I don't know if it was Rennie or if it was the other nice lady. Um, but my girl has her hands in all kinds of cookie jars because now she was cutting a promo on Willow. Um, and she was saying that she was talking some smack, like Mariah May is wont to do. Something along the lines of her losing belts, which gets her an opportunity to win another belt to lose it.
Yeah.
And
Talking
then
about Willow failing upward.
yeah, and then Willow was like, "Oh hell no!" So then she came out and she was like, "Nuh-uh."
She did it just like that, too. How'd it go
Yeah, she
again?
did. She was like, "Oh hell no!" She came out. She's like, "Uh-uh," and she came out very upset. And then she smacked Mariah on the boob, um, or like on the chest.
Not,
You know.
not the boob smack.
Yeah, it was like she smacked her hard though. It was Shivani
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
talked about
Yep.
how funny, like jokingly, it was talking about how hard that smack sounded. Um, but Willow struck first, uh, and then they got into a little brawl. So I don't know what's happening. I don't know if Mariah's gonna be going against Willow for some match at some point. And if that's the case, is Willow gonna have to have a match to determine whether or not she can have a match to beat her for the belt?
Yeah.
Or is that just whenever they freaking feel like it?
I agree. I'm not entirely sure because we saw Mariah May looking at Deeb and Baker,
Right.
but
And I
then
got
we cut to this with Willow. But who knows? Maybe because we just said that Mariah May's championship feels like it's been wasted,
yeah.
and so maybe they're trying to get her all mixed up in all kinds of angles, and I'm cool with that. I would have no problem with it. But I agree with you. Like now, I'm like, well, who is she going after next? So I'm
I
beginning to
mean,
wonder if it's going to be Willow Nightingale versus Mariah May at Wrestle Dream.
like if you're gonna make me pick, I'm gonna pick Mariah and Willow, please. Um,
Yeah,
I don't want to see what Mariah is gonna have to do to make a match between Britt Baker interesting. I don't wanna. I just don't feel
I
like going down that road, man.
Yeah. And I would even be all for like some way of mixing in like Queen Amanada and oh, what's the gal's name that she's always asking for? The
Oh,
Mina Shirakawa. There it
yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah,
Mina
yeah,
Shirakawa. So like if Mariah and Mina finally kind of, patch things up, I would be cool with seeing like Mina Shirakawa and Mariah May in a tag match against Willow and say Queen Aminata. That would be outstanding. But I don't know that maybe that's something in the future, but I don't think they've got that set up to hit at Wrestle Dream. I do tend to think it's going to be Mariah and Willow, and
yeah,
that we haven't seen, unfortunately, we haven't seen the last of Queen Aminata's feud with Deeb. So,
yeah. I know, and I ain't here for it. I'll say it again. I ain't daggone here for it. I don't
yeah,
want it.
exactly.
I don't
And
want it,
I
man.
think,
I've tried to give. I don't want it. Okay, like I'd rather
no,
watch Willow and Amanada go against each other. So I'd rather watch anything. Statlander fight somebody, anybody, rather than I just don't want to see
Mariah
it.
May versus Chris Statlander would be fantastic.
Yes, let's go. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of
Yep.
match I want to see. I don't want to see these
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see these slap fighting broads, you know? I don't want these, sling blade, done for the night. Ooh, tired.
Yeah.
I'm not here
Yep.
for it. I'm not here for it.
Yeah, I feel like you'll actually get some wrestling out of some of these other women. Like Mariah May
Yeah.
is not huge, but she's very tall, and her move set tends to consist of things like a spinning side slam and German suplexes and Mayday and Storm Zero, and I'm probably forgetting some, but her move set actually involves wrestling grapple moves and throws.
Yeah.
And same with Willow Nightingale, and same with Chris Statlander, and same with Queen Aminata. See the pattern of who we like versus who we're not that big on? We want to actually see women wrestle, not pretend slap fight for 90 minutes. Like, it's not cool
Yeah.
when the women do it in AEW, and it's not cool when the men do. I just gave a
No.
huge criticism of Jericho versus Suzuki over that same stupid thing. So, you know, cut it out. A little bit of strike battle is cool,
Stop
but
it.
I'm here to
It's a
actually
joke.
see wrestling because I can't see that anywhere else. In a boxing ring, I'm never going to see anybody like Steiner screwdriver somebody. I'm not going
Yeah.
to see German suplexes and whatnot. Maybe in the UFC, occasionally we'll see a suplex or a power bomb, but it's not the same. Um, so I'm here for the moves that are exclusive to professional wrestling that you just don't see anywhere else. Like I've
Yeah.
never once seen a UFC match where somebody busts out with a Stone Cold Stunner, but that would be outstanding if they did.
Amazing. Yeah.
So that's what I'm here for. Um, so yeah, I do think that we're probably set up for Mariah May and Willow at Wrestle Dream based on
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think this is a minor detail, but I was trying to remember it. I think this particular interview segment was conducted by Lexi Nair, not Rennie
Ah.
Packett.
Okay, nice.
Um,
Thank you.
mhm. And moving on from there, we are brought to a match between Private Party versus the Iron Savages.
Yeah.
And
This was actually the quickest match of the night. Like this was a squash match.
it was, and I have to say, the rising tide floating all boats has arrived for the Private Party. Like we used to mock Private Party something fierce, like not all that long
Yeah.
ago, we would make fun of. Oh my God, is this Private Party? Bleh. So and they've obviously listened, and theoretically, I guess it's because Moxley has kickstarted them into high gear to take their shit seriously by hammering, Isaiah's hand. So Private Party comes out to a totally different song. Like it's not the whole shot, shot, shots thing. It's a much
Yeah.
harder rap. And they more deliberately come to the ring. Like they look like they're here to conduct in-ring business. And so we're getting a bit of a repackage on Private Party. And I was like, okay. I'm open to the idea. Show me something.
Which
And
maybe this is what Moxley been talking about this whole time.
exactly. So it not only is good for Private Party to repackage them to be taken a little bit more seriously and less like a joke, but it ties directly into another meta story arc. It's brilliant, honestly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, To that end, it is Private Party versus the Iron Savages. Welcome to Titty City, y'all.
Hmm.
I I just can't get there with the Iron Savages. I get that they're sort of a low card jobber team, but they have been disgusting since day one. Initially starting out like instead of Titty City, they were talking about eating ass, and it's like Jesus, guys. And
Yeah.
Titty City ain't much better. And I'm like, how does any of this relate to the idea that you're Iron Savages that are like just a bunch of gym bros? Like you're not just gym bros, you're freaking disgusting is what you are. Like and not in an interesting way, like in a vulgar childish way, like the kind of way that I think WWE hopes to avoid like when they talk about like using more curse words or vulgarity. But there
Yeah.
are lines of vulgarity that I think are cheap and not worth going for. A more recent example would be all those times Liv Morgan like would find a way to be mounting Dominic Mysterio in the lead up to
Oh
them
God.
where they are now. I was
Yeah.
like, this is a bit like cringe is the thing,
Yeah.
and sometimes it goes beyond cringe to just like ugh, like it's distasteful to the degree that I'm not into it, and
Yeah.
that is the Iron Savages for me.
I
Like
agree.
I really just can't get there with their characters. And it's unfortunate because the guys might actually be very talented in the ring, but the characters they're conveying just make me want to vomit.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, while you are going after Iron Savages, and rightly so, I have to go after Private Party. This was a match that was a little over a minute. Um, and I think they had maybe two or three moves, and every last one of those moves they screwed up. They botched in some way. There was not a move that they got off correct at all in that
yeah.
minute and 20 something second match. That if you're starting over, if you're repackaging yourself, bruh, that's not a good look.
Well, I
That's
don't, I
not
don't
that's
know
not
if
good, mate.
I'm going to readily admit that it was way botchy for Private Party, and I don't know if they were like they're getting a repackage and so they're tense and they're nervous, but I did see Isaiah at least land some drop kicks that looked very good, like not crappy. Like he had a good single leg drop kick and some other moves, but you're right, like Private Party botched the crap out of that match
Yeah.
against the Iron Savages, and the worst offender was them hitting a very sloppy gin and juice finish.
Your
Um,
finisher.
this is your finisher move, by the way, guys. But the idea is that what is his name? I never remember Isaiah's tag partner, like
Um
Cassidy or some. I can't remember, but the other guy that is not Brother Zay in Private Party. I'm sorry. This is how
yeah.
little I have invested in Private Party to this point. But for gin and juice, he's supposed to run at a guy who's sitting on the top corner rope and jump up there or run up there high enough to Hurricane Rana the guy. And then in the middle of being Hurricane Rana, Isaiah catches the guy in midair and finishes him off with a cutter.
Yeah.
And the not Zay guy did not jump high enough to do the Hurricane Rana properly. Like his legs didn't even get past his opponent's waist. But fortunately, the guy from the Iron Savages managed to still jump out of the corner for him. But it looked awful. Like it looked so bad. And that was your finisher move.
Yeah.
So I
And
agree. I don't think this was the resurgence for Private Party that they were hoping for because of
and
that.
the thing that really kills it is after this, after you have the shortest, botchiest match known to man, you get on the mic to call out the Young Bucks. ¿Por qué? ¿Qué? Um, so you want the tag team titles? All right, sure. Don't know about that, but Young Bucks come out. They basically give them a response right then and there. And it was something like they're not going to
Yeah.
waste any of their limited dates.
limited performance dates. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
on
it
this kind of
was
town.
yeah,
Go
it
ahead.
was the stereotypical Bucks came out, they're dressed in their ring attire. This is a lot like what Gunter did to Sami Zayn. He comes out and they're like, "So, everybody in Pittsburgh, you want to see us go one-on-one with Private Party for these, AEW tag belts?" And the whole of Pittsburgh is like, "Yeah." And they're like, "No." And so it was like, "Oh, okay."
Like, I see. All right, yeah, you got us. Um, but while they're talking, Jack Perry runs in to beat up Private Party. Uh, but then Shibata comes in to make the assist. Um, there was somebody else that came in, and I'm trying to remember who, but I think
Oh,
somebody.
it was at that point that the acting EVP or the like interim EVP Christopher Daniels walks out with a mic to do the Adam Pierce thing from Monday Night Raw and
Yes.
says, "Hey, I've got an idea. How about a six-man match? The Young Bucks and Jack Perry versus Private Party and Katsuyori Shibata on Rampage." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I that could be interesting." I didn't even know that the Bucks recalled that Rampage was a show that AEW did because they almost exclusively show up on Dynamite and at most Collision. So that
Yeah.
was cool.
Yeah. So something good came out of it, but but to hear Private Party come out and call out the Young Bucks and demand a tag team title match, it's like you have to be kidding. You just gave us the shortest, botchiest match, like legit ever. So it's just gonna make it hard for people to take that seriously. You know what I mean? You know how we just talked about not really like AEW is good for keeping you on the edge of your seat because you honestly don't know who is going to win this match. I know who's going to win this match. I know who's going to win this one. Come on. Um so I mean, hey, maybe Chibata can raise it up a notch. Um but I doubt it. I
Well,
so
I
yeah.
would suggest that this is less of a function of predictable booking and more of a function of what we just watched with Private Party. Like they
Mhm.
just went against a team that's kind of low on the totem pole in the Iron Savages and they made it a botch fest. So what the hell am I expected as a wrestling fan who just saw this? What am I
Right.
expected to believe will be the case when you step in there with inarguably one of the greatest tag teams
Yeah.
ever in the Young Bucks?
And all you have to talk about when you get in the ring is that one time that you beat them? Oh, nothing else? Like nothing like and I think that's what they showed for like the 5 years of AEW, right?
Yeah.
At
Yep.
what I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, I can see that being a valid criticism, but I would also counter that with like it looks like AEW is right now in the midst of fixing that. So I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sure
that's
if your
true.
complaint is that something is wrong in AEW because Private Party has nothing else to talk about in the past 5 years than that one time they beat the Bucks. While they're in the process of giving Private Party a push so that they have something, I mean, what would you want them to do? Just fire
Yeah.
Private Party?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
that's their alternative. They either bring Private Party up and make them credible and give them something new to talk about, or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, I mean, I said all that to say that I'm concerned that that match was so sloppy, and then you want to put them in the ring with the Young Bucks. Um, but I'm also hopeful that maybe that you just had an off night. Again, wrestlers can have off nights, so maybe you guys were having an off night. Maybe you rushed out there, and you had to do this real quick. Or hell, maybe your opponents were giving you some trouble. I don't know, but whatever the case, you guys didn't mesh well together. Whatever the case. I'm hoping for a good match between the Young Bucks. I just don't anticipate them winning. I feel like I can almost predict that they won't win, but I could be wrong. AEW could surprise me. Juice Robinson just gave us one hell of a match that people are bitching about. So,
you just took the words right out of my mouth, right? Like we looked at
yeah.
Hangman versus Juice, and our immediate response is, "Well, it was nice knowing you, Juice." And then we
Yep.
were pleasantly surprised, even though he didn't win, at how much of a fight he put up and how good of a match he had with him. So even if Private Party doesn't beat the Young Bucks, and I agree, they probably won't, as long as they make a great showing and make me believe that they had any right to step in that ring with the Young Bucks, then you've done what you needed to do here. They don't have
Yeah.
to win immediately, but I would like to see that it's not a complete joke of an idea that Private Party steps in the ring with the Bucks.
Yeah.
So get me to there, and I'll be fine with it.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. Excuse me.
So moving on from that particular match, and it's a shame Private Party didn't sell it better. But moving on from there, we have MVP again, I believe, with Rennie Packets. We love Rennie Packets.
Mm-hmm.
And he is about to make an announcement, but is interrupted by Prince Nana, who would like to let MVP know, that people have forgotten, but Nana used to wrestle. And he'll be happy to strap up the boots again if MVP keeps talking that hot noise like he did last week about Prince Nana and Swerve Strickland's relationship.
Yeah. And MVP was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't handle the complaints.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he doesn't
And
deal with the complaints department.
yeah, that's not him. But he introduced Prince Nana to who does handle the complaints. The head of the complaint department, Shelton Benjamin.
And we can now confirm that Shelton Benjamin is over with MVP at All Elite Wrestling.
I'm so
And
here for
so
it.
we see the even more proof like when MVP showed up, like there was a lot of speculation throughout August about MVP and but Shelton Benjamin and potentially even Bobby Lashley all coming over to AEW to rebuild the Hurt business. And from what we've seen so far, we've gotten MVP, we've gotten Shelton Benjamin. Will we end up with Bobby Lashley? So
Yeah.
it looks like that's exactly the idea, is to reform the Hurt business and possibly even grow it, because he's handing out business cards to, like he wants Swerve and he wants Mercedes.
Yeah.
So this could be some big Hurt business if MVP plays his cards right.
Yeah. Um and so that I'm here for it. Whatever is happening, I'm here for it. If they have like I don't know if there's gonna be a faction because they've been showing us oh man, what's his name? The guy who's with Statlander, Stokely. They've been
Stokely
showing us
Hathaway, yeah.
Stokely checking out other wrestlers too.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if they're just gonna start like make two big factions here that I will be here for.
Yeah.
Like so here for.
Yeah, what if it ends up being MVP versus Stokely? Now, I don't think that's going to go well for Stokely, but who knows?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I don't foresee Swerve Strickland abandoning Nana. I mean, not for nothing.
Yeah, I
Nana
don't.
Nana is a huge part of his like entrance to the ring that everybody pops like crazy for. So I
Yeah.
think that would be bad. But what if like Swerve and Nana managed to somehow come to terms with like an MVP arrangement, and you ended up with this mega stable that includes the most dangerous man in AEW, Swerve Strickland?
Yeah.
Do you
That
think
would
they could
be
coexist if they picked up someone like Bobby Lashley, or do you think that would be
ooh.
too many big guys? Or maybe Swerve gets in MVP's face, not appreciating how he's dealt with Nana, and MVP's like, "That's cool. I found a bigger, better deal anyway." Have you met Bobby Lashley? That would be so hot,
Yeah,
so much fire on that.
the world will implode at that particular point. I don't know, man. I don't know cuz you got the big brutality that could be Lashley in AEW uh with all that experience. Ooh, that's scary. In the ring with
Swerve.
Swerve, man,
Yeah.
I'd be here for it. I'd be here for it.
I would absolutely want to see it.
The
And
only
I
thing
mean
I don't want to
immediately.
see, the only thing I don't want to see is Monet in that fact
Yeah,
in
I
any of
mean,
those factions.
Again, I will be happy to completely reverse my opinion and become a raging superfan. I mean, we've done it with other wrestlers, and I refer to Wheeler Yuta, who we just didn't give a shit about until we did.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
our opinion will change if what we don't like about these wrestlers changes. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm here to hate to hate. I'm not a wrestling fan for that. I give criticisms about what I think makes the product stink and could be improved upon.
Yeah.
So if these women can be fixed or improved or, brought up to the level that we would like to see, then I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it.
Yep.
And if anybody has a shot in hell of doing it, AEW does, because they've been really, really, really good lately at bringing up people that we just didn't see it coming, like Wheeler Yuta and Juice Robinson, and it's just been fantastic to watch. I mean, Kyle O'Reilly, we mentioned that too. Like them sticking him in the conglomeration keeps him from being lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
Just there's lots of examples, but I don't want to give all of them. I think I've given enough of them. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that they can do that for these women. Otherwise they'll continue to stink up the joint, and that's no good. That
Yeah.
said, if they do end up with Bobby Lashley, and I mean, Bobby versus Swerve would be amazing, but I would also be very here for like a powerhouse, mighty, mighty meat slapper match between him and Big Brian Cage. That would be so good.
Yeah.
Or him versus Big Bill. Christ. So,
Oh, I'd be here for that.
yeah, those could be some amazing matches.
Yeah, for sure. Is it time to talk about?
It is time to talk about. We finally make our way to the main event, and it is a unique stipulation of a champion versus championship match. It is Bryan Danielson, the AEW World Champion, versus Kazuchika Okada, the the AEW Continental Champion. And it's a weird stipulation in this one because only for the first 20 minutes of this match is Kazuchika Okada's title on the line.
Yeah.
After if the match goes longer than that, beyond that point, it is only Bryan Danielson's title that is still on the line. And
Mm-hmm.
what a strange stipulation that is. But, okay, it's something different.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I would think that given that stipulation, it absolutely encourages Okada to stall for time, but it
Yeah.
should absolutely encourage Danielson, assuming he's interested in actually having the Continental Championship as well. It would
Right.
encourage him to be extremely aggressive and try to end the match as fast as possible. Only one of those things I felt like was true in this. Like Okada
Yeah.
definitely stalled, but so did Bryan. And that
Yeah.
really kind of confused me about this match. So it was very long and slow in the first 20 minutes. Because
Yes.
Danielson seemed to have absolutely zero impetus to try to win Okada's belt from him. Like he didn't care. And that really sort of undermined the value of this stipulation at all.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
basically had Bryan not caring and Okada stalling, and it's like so the first 20 minutes was just really super slow and terribly boring. And that's what I was referring to back when I said my criticism of Daniel's wrestling style. Like this was a prime example of how boring a match with him can be. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I'll be happy to turn it over to you if you'd like to explore it further.
To be perfectly honest, I didn't enjoy this match until the last half of it. Um, it was boring. I mean, like there was a time we have 20 minutes here. There was a time where Danielson legit stood there with his hands on his hips. Like, you got time for that? You're trying. Do you want
Yeah,
this belt? Like, if you don't want the belt, then I don't even know why it was on the line. We could have just had just a regular match, and then just kept it, at that. I don't think anybody would have been hurt by that. So I don't really understand what that what the point of that was. And
Yeah.
it was this match really didn't open up until they started doing each other's moves. Um until I mean, and I know that you aren't feeling the psycho knee, but man, I was begging for the psycho knee by the time we
Well,
were
we were
towards the end of
begging
this
for
match.
anything. Like I almost
Yeah,
feel like that's Brian's like strategy is like I'm going to bore you to death so that when I ever actually do something, you'll be thrilled, if for only
I
for it to come to an
listen.
end.
I hear you, but I also put some of that on Okada too, because while he is a hilarious character wrestler, and he has really good faces, and he does a great job of feigning injury, or
Hmm. Yeah, he's
he's
good at playing
crafty.
possum.
Yeah, he's crafty. He's perfect. Like he's perfect. He's exactly what you want out of somebody who's playing possum. Like he's good. He's real good at being a little snake.
A little troll.
A little troll. I'm sure that Nature Boy is absolutely amused by his antics. Um, with that being said, I don't want to spend 30 seconds watching you make a face. I don't. Like, bro, I get it. And it's funny. It's funny. And it is for like 2 seconds, 3 seconds most. We don't need to go into whatever the hell we're going into with him and then the
Yeah.
camera has to be there for like eight.
Hmm.
We don't need that. So, but that's what I'm
I
talking about.
I kind
That
of
kind
feel
of
like
stuff.
I was just gonna say I kind of feel like the first 20 minutes of this match was absolutely throwaway. Like it was
Yeah,
complete trash because unlike, and I mentioned it before and I feel the need to reiterate it because this should have made the first 20 minutes the most intense because both men had their titles on the line. The problem is that logically speaking, it makes sense for Okada to try and drag the match out because his title's on the line in the first 20 minutes. Alternatively, it makes sense for Brian to go after him harder in the first 20 minutes because he has an opportunity to not just preserve his belt, but to win a new one. And
yeah.
only half of that played out correctly.
I
Brian
would have.
didn't
Yeah,
give a crap. And so it just made for a long, slow 20 minutes. Like you could clip the 20 minutes out of this and lose literally fucking nothing. It was
no,
garbage.
you're right.
And so what
You're
you're
right.
talking about, Kazuchika Okada making faces in the first 20 minutes, because that's when it happened.
Yep.
What the hell else is he gonna do? Like the match was engineered to be stalled out for 20 minutes of wasted space for
We could have
what
done
purpose?
anything. He could have been out on the apron. We could have gotten Danielson on the top rope there on the corner. Could have got him jumping down. Look, do a freaking psycho knee from space. I don't know. Just give us, if all you did was run circles in the ring and then end with the psycho knee, that would have been more interesting and more entertaining than what we got. Just having
Yeah,
Okada running around would have been interesting. But Danielson standing in the ring and Okada staring at him like, and then Danielson stepping forward, like stepping towards him, and then Okada go, no, and then like, wait, and like hanging off the apron. Come on, stop.
yeah.
Like,
So the match
and why would you
didn't.
stop? Why would you stop? Because he said stop. This is
Yeah,
your opponent, bruh. Like,
yep.
I don't know. So,
No, and
but
for
after,
what was, sorry, just real quick, what was a like 31 and some change minute match?
yeah,
20 of those minutes were garbage. Like they were absolute garbage. It was only like the last 10 to 12 minutes that were worth anything. So long match for the sake of long match is not good. It
yeah,
should be a good match if it's going to go that long. Like nobody cares if you can go like 60, 30, 60, whatever minutes in the ring if you're not doing anything of consequence and it's boring. All it is that it means it's making it take longer for this shit match to come to a freaking end.
yeah,
I would contrast that with the 60 minutes that MJF and Osprey did that were phenomenal. Like every freaking minute was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just don't get it, y'all. What is it about Danielson? Like, as a person, maybe he's cool, having a storied career, cool, but he makes me want to pass out watching him in the ring. Like, he is literally putting all of us in a submission hold to endure watching his matches. I will be grateful for when he retires. No hate. I just
Yeah.
can't stand watching you perform in the ring and you're eating up TV time because a lot of people are worshiping the ground you walk on for reasons. There we go.
Yeah.
I said it. I'm good.
But then, so I mean, after the first 20 minutes, the last 10 or 11 minutes were decent. Um, and of course, Brian Danielson wins. Um, Afterwards, Okada Okada gave him the Rainmaker, and then left, which I thought was hilarious. Um, and
Yeah,
he
a
let
big
go ahead.
I was just going to say a big part of that was because you had Claudio and Pac come out to interfere.
Yeah, they came out towards the end of the match, and they were like seen walking through the audience and all that, and Okada basically took Okada's attention away, uh, which basically essentially caused Danielson to win the match. And then Okada was like, "Well, screw you," because he was given Brian Rainmaker. So like I think he had done two at that point, and
Hmm.
was gonna do a third when he got distracted by the Motley Crew, the Moxley, Jesus, the Moxley Crew, and then because he got distracted, he did his last rain, he did his last Rainmaker, and then he left, and then Pac and Moxley and Claudio start to make their way into the ring. Um, Shafir, Marina, she also came in.
Yep.
Castagnoli and Pac uh, are basically picking Danielson up off of the mat. But then they start to restrain him because we realize that Moxley is coming into the ring. And of course, Danielson is going to want to attack him. So that's why they were holding him back. I don't know why people keep saying that they're attacking Danielson. They haven't laid a hand on him yet. Like, they hold him, they restrain him. Shafir will put him in a chokehold, basically. Um, but I mean, she's clearly not choking him, or he would have been choked out. Uh, so they're all just basically there to hold him still and stop and prevent him from attacking Moxley. Like, that's all they've done. But for some reason, whenever I see anyone talking about this or read about it, they always talk about how they go in to attack him, and I'm like, they haven't though. Am I just
Well,
missing their
yeah.
attacks?
No, they haven't here. Although I think Shafir may have been choking Danielson a bit. And prior, I mean, you had Moxley fully attack him by putting that plastic bag on his head. So I don't think it's a weird presumption. But I do want to address, like earlier in the podcast, I mentioned how Moxley is sort of mentioning kind of like Thanos that there's a bigger thing he's trying to accomplish, and it's not about him. And Moxley here again reiterates that this isn't about Danielson and it isn't about Moxley. It's about the fact that he knows that Moxley, that is, knows that he is the only one who will fight for AEW the
Yeah,
way it needs to be fought for. And so it's not that he has anything personal against Danielson. It's just that Danielson is in the way of the inevitable thing that he needs to do and that only he is capable and willing to do.
yeah,
And I've seen other people online going, is John Moxley controlled? Because the way he says it makes it sound like somebody is forcing his hand. And I don't really get that personally. I get this more of like, again, Thanos is a great example, where it's something that is ultimately got to be done for the greater good, but it's going to be brutal and it's going to be war to get there. So he's the only one that's got the stomach for what comes next, but it's what needs to happen. So I don't necessarily agree with the idea that Moxley's being controlled or puppet stringed by someone. I think it's much more this idea that there's something that he feels needs to be done to save AEW or whatever that only he is capable of doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, but moving on from that, um, at this point, Wheeler Yuta has seen enough, and he charges the ring with a like ballpen hammer in hand, not dissimilar to what Moxley thrashed Brother Zay's hand with.
Yeah.
And he chases all of the Moxley crew out of the ring. But at one point, Moxley sneaks in behind him and just stands there, daring Yuta to hit him with the hammer. And Yuta kind of hesitates, like he doesn't. He's waiting for Moxley to give him a reason. And in that hesitation, Bryan Danielson gets up and runs and just nails Moxley with a Psycho knee. And I think the rest of the Moxley crew jumps into the ring on that, and Yuta and Danielson clear the ring. And then Danielson issues a challenge for a tag match.
Yeah.
Um, so they're setting up a tag match that's going to be against Castagnoli and Pac versus Danielson and Yuta.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember when they said that was going to be for. Did they say it was going to be for Collision, or is it next week's Dynamite? I can't remember.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought it was for
Is it for
is
Wrestle Dream?
Or did they even say when?
I'm not sure if they made that clear, but or I could just be not remembering. But we have an upcoming match to close the show. We've got that match being made between Pac and Castagnoli versus Danielson and Yuta. And there's a couple of ways that I could see this going. But if because they've hinted it, like saying like Yuta, you can try to fight it, but you're one of us. Moxley and Castagnoli and Pac have all been kind of laying that seed. And then the couple of times we see Yuta, like he goes berserker mode, and then he has to kind of shake it off of himself. So there's a very real question about like whether or not Yuta will tap into like come to the dark side with us, Yuta, and
Yeah.
or if he's gonna stick with Danielson. And so if ever there's an opportunity for him to stab Danielson in the back and really join the dark side once and freaking for all, it might be this tag match coming. So it could go that route, or Yuta could be like, "Screw you guys, I'm my own man," which was kind of what he said on this occasion.
Yeah.
But we'll just have to see. But I'm intrigued. That quite honestly was the most interesting portion of the main event. Sadly, I think the absolute worst match of the night was clearly Deeb and Britt Baker, but I would have to put this maybe like right behind it because of taking 20 minutes to just waste all of our time that didn't go anywhere and
Yeah.
only to get good in like maybe the last 10. And a big part of what was good was like not the match itself, but the story that spawned off of it involving the Moxley crew and Wheeler Yuta and whatnot. Like Danielson's the least interesting component in this whole thing. But he's kind of like the MacGuffin. He's what Yuta is fighting against Pat Castagnoli and Mox against. So,
Yeah.
eh.
I Yeah, I mean that match was I feel like that was the low point. I don't think the ending for the Osprey versus Ricochet match was the low point. I think this match was. Just because it was like you
Yeah.
said, drawn out for a very long time, and the ending was the best part about it. So they could have just had a 10-minute match and then the rest of the ending, and I would have been cool with it. But or giving us something else for to fill that time slot, because man, that was pretty hard. The first 20 minutes or so were pretty hard to be invested in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah.
And this particular episode of Dynamite puts me in a tough spot with regards to my final review because it's a peaks and valley problem. There were two really high peaks in terms of matches, right? There was Osprey and Ricochet, which was absolutely stellar, and there was Juice Robinson and Hangman, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. You had the return of Jay White, but just going pound for pound on the card, there were two matches that were super good, and there might have been like three matches that were not.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Serena Deeb and Britt Baker, which I think might have been the worst. But part of that could be my bias against, like, I'm not a fan of either of those two women. So um, I just can't. I can't. Um, and then you had Private Botch Party versus the Iron Savages, which I don't even know how that would rate on the card because the whole thing was like a minute and 13 seconds. So it was almost like a
Ah,
promo segment.
exactly how I would rate. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
horrible
but I
match.
mean,
So
it was pretty bad, but it was at least short bad. And then you had the overly long, like throwaway 20 minutes of my life, Brian Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada, which I could legitimately say, like, if anybody asked me about this match, I would say it's largely skippable till the end. Honestly, I mean, you would be
mhm.
doing yourself a favor, realistically. Like, if you go back and you watch this and you can fast forward, I would say skip to the very end because there literally is nothing worth seeing prior to that, like, or
Yeah,
at least to the last 10 minutes at the soonest.
yeah,
Everything prior to that was trash, and it was a waste. And I mean, out of 30 minutes, only 10 of them are good. That means that like two-thirds of this match was total garbage. So I have to give like a really low rating. Like, I'm torn between Serena Deeb and the main event. Like Serena Deeb and Britt Baker in the main event for being the worst matches of the night, and that's with Private Party having a flub fest. But at least they got it over with quick. So that said, I'm not entirely sure where to put this episode of Dynamite because we had two like really super good matches, and we also had some fantastic promos like Chris Jericho with Mark Briscoe and some other things going on like MVP and all that stuff, the stuff that's not technically a match but was part of the show, that leaves me, I don't feel comfortable giving this episode top tier, but I can't stick it in the wastebasket either. So I think I have to arrive at something along the lines of meh with some caveats. The match between Will Ospreay and Ricochet and Hangman and Juice are absolutely, you should see it. Every other match on the card you could forget about. But then all of the stuff in between, like the promos and the arrivals of certain people like Shelton Benjamin and the return of Jay White, absolutely worth your time. So I think that's the best I can do. Is this was a middling at best. Like, it's not skip it, but it's skip most of it, like in terms of the matches. So
yeah.
that's my take on this episode of Dynamite. Unfortunately, it had a lot of potential, and it certainly had some real peaks, but it also had some valleys.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give this one a 4. It's clearly not top tier, and I would have to say that it's enough bad. There's enough bad to push it over to the crap section, like the crap side, because the match with Will Ospreay and Ricochet, wonderful. Hangman and Juice, super. Britt and Serena, horrible. Private Party and Iron Savages, just lame, just botched, just lame as all get out. And Brian Danielson versus Okada, uh, 20 minutes of boredom, just 20 minutes of pointless. It was pointless, which made it even worse that it was boring. Um, because it was boring just for the sake of being, and that I just can't stand. So while we have two matches that were good and two matches technically that were bad, we still have that one botch job by private party that pushes it over into the
Yep.
crap section. And for all the stuff that was good about this, you could just watch that, honestly. So
Yeah.
even the promos, I mean, just look online and find out what the information was, honestly. I don't think you should waste your time. Um, I would not give this.
Certainly not on the whole episode. Like,
No,
honestly,
no, no.
I'm trying to think of a kitschy way of saying watch some of it, but not all of it. But maybe that's the best I can do right there. But you
Yeah.
should definitely watch, like, listeners, I'd recommend watching Osprey and Ricochet for sure. I'd recommend watching Hangman and Juice Robinson for sure. I'd absolutely recommend skipping, like, in the entirety of Britt Baker and Serena Deeb, the entirety of Private Party's Botch Fest, unless you just want to laugh at that. I mean, maybe that would be funny to you. And Daniel Bryan and Kazuchika Okada, you could probably skip all the way to the last 5 minutes. I mean, maybe you want to see the last little segment between Okada and Danielson, but honestly, the part that was really worth watching out of that sad match was the part that further developed on the Moxley Yuta Danielson situation. It was not, unfortunately, it was not Okada's best work, and that's unfortunate, because this was just a snoozer. It
Yeah.
was bad. Both men looked worse, neither man better. Really, really low point when the main event is that lame.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just recommend that you watch it back on, like, however you would watch it back, like if you recorded it or whatnot. I'd recommend going and just picking out and cherry picking the good parts, because like a whole lot of the rest of it was garbage, like hot garbage, like set it on fire.
Yeah. Agreed. Wah wah.
Yeah, it hurts my soul to ever put any of these like that. Like, it kills me that we've said that about SmackDowns. It kills me to say that about this Dynamite, especially when AEW had been on such a roll. But I mean, we got to be straight with you guys. We're fans, and none of this is because we hate wrestling. We definitely think we could see better out of SmackDown. We definitely think we could see better out of Dynamite. When we make
Yeah.
those criticisms, it's because we know that they can do better. And as fans, we would like them to do better. I want to be eyeballs glued to the set and then mind blown, so that the next time I'm podcasting about the show, all I'm saying is how freaking amazing all of it was. All of it. But unfortunately, they're not all winners.
Yeah.
So that has been our review of AEW Dynamite 5th year anniversary. And I really wish I had better things to say about it, but it is what it is. If you've made it this far, I want to thank all of you for listening, and I hope you come back and listen to the next one. And on that note, I will go ahead and roll the outro.
Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Top Tier Wrestling. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest AEW and WWE news and shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media for updates and to join the conversation. Until next time, everyone, remember, wrestling is always better when it's top tier.